The morning of May 25, 1979, dawned over Chicago with a pale, restless sky. The kind of morning that felt ordinary but was about to change the course of history. American Airlines Flight 191, a McDonnell Douglas DC-10, stood ready on the tarmac of O'Hare International Airport. Its massive engines gleamed under the weak sunlight, its fuselage promising a smooth journey to Los Angeles. Crew members moved with practiced efficiency. Captain Walter Lux checked his instruments, reviewing the flight plan. First Officer James Dillard ran through his pre-flight checklist. The flight attendant smiled at passengers, unaware that this would be no ordinary flight. As passengers boarded, the atmosphere was typical for a mid-morning departure. Businessmen shuffled to their seats, families settled with children, and tourists gazed out the windows, imagining sunny California. Flight 191 was scheduled for a routine journey, just another routine. But as the aircraft began taxiing, a subtle tension lingered in the air, invisible yet inevitable, born from the minute margin between engineering perfection and disaster. The DC-10 roared to life, its engines a symphony of power and precision. The plane began its takeoff roll, speeding down runway 32R. For the first few seconds, everything seemed normal. The passengers leaned back, engines vibrating beneath them. But at precisely 13:42, disaster struck. On the left wing, the number 1 engine, attached by a pylon, detached violently. A metallic screech echoed through the aircraft as it tore free, dragging wiring and hydraulic lines with it. The wing, suddenly unbalanced, struggled to maintain lift. The plane shuddered, pitching slightly, and the roar of escaping air and screaming metal filled the cabin. Captain Lux immediately recognized the severity. His hands gripped the yoke as alarms blared. Hydraulic pressure warnings and engine failures. E-lights flashed across the panel. The left wing had lost lift, and the DC-10 began a subtle roll. Lux fought to stabilize the aircraft. Dillard assisted, confirming systems and repeating commands, their training now the only buffer between life and catastrophe. In the cabin, flight attendants struggled to calm panicked passengers. Screams mixed with the roar of engines, the metallic groan of the wing, and the smell of smoke seeping into the cabin air. The aircraft, now partially uncontrollable, veered to the left. The left landing gear scraped the runway, sparks flying as friction tore into metal. Captain Lux pushed the throttles forward, attempting to gain altitude and lift the stricken plane. The left wing, damaged and losing hydraulic fluid, began a violent oscillation. The pilots were fighting not just gravity, but a battle of physics against a machine no longer whole. Passengers felt the tilt, the unnatural dip, the terrifying lurch. Objects were thrown across the cabin as seatbelts strained to hold terrified bodies. Outside, witnesses on the airport perimeter watched in horror as the DC-10 struggled for air. Sparks trailed from the wing, smoke spiraled upward, and the aircraft began a slow, uncontrollable climb. Seconds felt like hours. Below, the runway became a dangerous canvas of debris, the last tether to safety slipping away. Emergency crews sprinted toward the scene, unaware of the scale of what was about to unfold. The left engine, a monstrous mass of metal and power, lay torn from its pylon on the runway. Its detachment had caused the loss of vital hydraulic systems, rendering many of the control surfaces ineffective. The pilot's every movement was now a desperate improvisation, their actions guided by instinct, training, and sheer will. The DC-10 lifted partially off the ground, but the imbalance was catastrophic. Captain Lux attempted to roll the plane back to the right to counter the left wing's instability. The aircraft responded sluggishly, the controls resisting. Dillard called out readings, confirming that the hydraulic pressure had fallen to critical levels. The flight attendants braced passengers, holding onto straps, their calm voices barely audible over the chaos. The aircraft's left wing began to dip uncontrollably, sending the fuselage toward the ground. A sickening realization swept through everyone. There was no saving the plane from immediate impact. Seconds later, Flight 191 crashed into an open field just beyond the airport perimeter. The impact was catastrophic. The fuselage disintegrated on contact, flames erupting instantly as fuel ignited. Metal twisted and screamed, glass shattered, and the force hurled passengers and crew with brutal finality. Witnesses on the ground could only stare as smoke and fire consumed the aircraft. Debris scattered across the grassy plain. Emergency crews rushed in, sirens wailing, smoke and heat threatening to overwhelm the survivors. The scene was apocalyptic, a twisted testament to the fragile margin between engineering and chaos. The aftermath revealed the scale of the tragedy. Of the 271 souls on board, 273 perished, including 2 on the ground. Investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board arrived quickly, combing through the wreckage, documenting every fragment, every twisted piece of metal. The engine pylon had been improperly maintained during a routine overhaul, a detail imperceptible until catastrophe revealed its consequences. The detached engine severed hydraulic lines, causing control surfaces to fail, a chain reaction no training could fully overcome. Reconstruction of the flight's final moments relied heavily on witness accounts, flight data, and painstaking analysis of the wreckage. Animated simulations showed the terrifying oscillations of the left wing, the pilot's frantic efforts, and the uncontrollable roll that sealed the aircraft's fate. The DC-10, once a marvel of modern engineering, had become a stark symbol of human error and oversight. Each sequence of the crash was meticulously recreated to understand what went wrong, offering lessons that would influence aviation safety for decades. Safety regulations were immediately revisited. Maintenance protocols, inspection standards, and pylon attachment procedures were overhauled to prevent any repeat of the tragedy. Engineers scrutinized every detail of the DC-10 design, reinforcing the importance of redundancy and fail-safes in commercial aviation. Pilots were trained on emergency procedures for engine detachment scenarios, and simulation technology advanced, incorporating lessons from Flight 191 into pilot training programs worldwide. The human cost had been immense, but the lessons were clear. Even minor deviations from procedure can cascade into disaster. The story of Flight 191 is not just one of tragedy, but also of resilience and progress. Aviation, inherently complex and dangerous, learns most from its darkest moments. Each airline, engineer, and pilot carries the weight of these lessons forward. Modern aircraft, maintenance checks, and pilot training are safer today because of the hard-won knowledge extracted from that fateful day in 1979. Flight 191 became a somber reminder that safety in the sky is never accidental. It is earned through diligence, precision, and vigilance. As cinematic reconstructions illustrate, the final seconds of Flight 191 were chaotic and terrifying, a ballet of physics, metal, and human determination. Passengers and crew faced the impossible, and although many lives were lost, the incident reshaped aviation standards globally. The DC-10 returned to the skies eventually, redesigned and scrutinized, a symbol of how lessons from disaster can be transformed into safeguards for the future. In reflecting on Flight 191, it becomes clear that aviation is as much about human courage as it is about engineering. Pilots like Captain Lux and First Officer Dillard confronted a situation no training could fully anticipate, relying on instinct and professionalism. Their actions, though unable to prevent the crash, exemplified the rigor and dedication of those entrusted with lives at 35,000 feet. Flight attendants, airport staff, and emergency responders demonstrated heroism on the ground, attending to survivors and braving dangerous conditions to save others. The legacy of American Airlines Flight 191 endures in the aviation community, memorials, and safety protocols. It stands as a warning, a lesson, and a motivation to pursue perfection in a field where the margin for error is measured in seconds and inches. Animated reconstructions allow viewers today to witness, understand, and respect the complexity of flight, the vulnerability of aircraft, and the resilience of those who dedicate their lives to keeping the skies safe. Even decades later, Flight 191 serves as a somber story of loss, but also of progress. Its echoes are felt in improved safety standards, meticulous maintenance, and rigorous pilot training. Every modern aircraft that takes off carries within it the lessons learned from that